You see the offseason right now where you have CP3 going to the Warriors. You see how the Phoenix Suns got Bradley Beal. Do you think it's right for the Timberwolves just to run it back, or should they just try to strike now and just try to clean the books, because it may be even more difficult to move Karl Anthony Towns down the line, considering, and also you got to have it into consideration that the Wolves did play better while he was out to some degree.
Well, so yeah, I would say this. I think that it all depends on what their options are in terms of let's just say for instance that they have decided, which I don't believe they have, but let's just say for the sake of argument they decide, you know what, we do have to move Karl Anthony Towns now. Like it's time to move on. It's time to get what we can get for him and then move forward with more of an Anthony Edwards-centric team. Well, there's making that decision, but then there's also making sure that you recoup the good value for your investment. And if there is not a scenario out there right now where a team wants to commit serious draft capital and maybe a good young player or two for Karl Anthony Towns, then I think your decision is made for you and you just ride it out a little bit. And maybe as the season begins next year, Karl Anthony Towns is healthy, he plays a lot better, the team responds, then the value would come up for him. The value would also come up for Rudy Gobert, who, let's face it, is coming off of a very underwhelming season. And so he doesn't have a whole lot of trade value with his contract right now. And so in some ways, even if they wanted to make a move this summer, they may be dealing from a position of weakness a little bit in terms of the value of some of their guys. Now, what would be difficult for them, I think, is if a team came to them. Maybe it's your Knicks. Maybe it's Portland. Maybe it's there's a bunch of teams out there that might come Dallas and say, hey, here is a really attractive offer for Towns. Like, say no to me. That might be a different scenario, but I think that they do have some time to play this out a little bit longer if they want to start the season and see if maybe everything comes together much better than it did last year. Last year was so disjointed. Cat and Rudy both missed most of training camp. Then Towns goes down with the calf injury. Rudy was in and out just a little bit. They never seem to really have any extended time together. And so if you give them a little bit more time, maybe they'll end up looking great, be a challenge for a top 4 seed in the West, and then make it a lot easier for them to either trade Cat or Rudy, or maybe you can still, Naz Reid's contract is going to be very tradable. So that just gives them some more options than maybe it might look like they have right now.
What do you, based on your opinion, where do things stand from a relationship standpoint with Towns and the organization? I mean, his name has come up in trade rumors all off season since it started, whether it's Portland to Dame, Cat to the Knicks is always strong. There's reports that he's buying real estate apartments in New York. So, the rumors are flying there. Based on your opinion, where do things stand with Cat and the organization?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, and I've had conversations with people on all sides of this, I think that, Karl Anthony Towns would like to be here in Minnesota. He loves playing with Anthony Edwards. He has a really good relationship with Rudy Gobert. He has good relationships with a lot of the players on the team, and he has a lot of respect for Chris Finch as a head coach. And so I know that there's always been, really over the last maybe 3 to 4 years, I think there's been a collective wondering, when would Karl Anthony Towns look at what's been around him in Minnesota and say, you know what, this isn't it. I need to go somewhere else. We've seen a ton of stars make those kinds of declarations and try and force their issue on the way out. So far here, there's been no indication of that. Towns wants to make it work in Minnesota. He wants to be here for the long term. And so I don't think that there's any strains or anything with that. I think that the biggest key to that is that he and Edwards get along very, very well. And, there's always this conversation of, well, whose team is it? And who's, can they share the spotlight? I do think that they can both coexist together very, very well. So to me, the question becomes for the Timberwolves, is not, hey, do we want Karl Anthony Towns here? Do we want to have a long-term relationship with him and keep him around from a basketball standpoint? It's purely, can they afford to financially? And that's a decision that they will have to make ultimately. And so if something were to happen short-term, long-term with Towns or with Rudy Gobert, I do believe that it would be just them realizing, look, we've got to change the financial picture of this team to meet it. And it would be less about personalities or basketball fits or anything like that.